We're now ready to our second session under the headline, How can the Ministry of Foreign Affairs provide added value to the Danish society and its stakeholders in the year of 2025. Let's see what answers we get to that. But to kick us off, we have our distinguished keynote speaker, Tom Fletcher, who we might know as author of Naked Diplomacy, Power and Statecraft in the Digital Age, a well-reviewed book which was published and came out, I think, in June of last year, so it's only half a year old. And you may also know Tom's name as he served as UK ambassador to the Lebanon from 2011 to 2015, and prior to that he served as foreign policy advisor to 3 British prime ministers. Please, Tom, take the stage. It's all yours for the next 30 minutes.
Thank you. Thanks, Adam, and good morning, everyone. It's great to be here in Copenhagen. Adam gave you some of my titles. As you can tell, I'm a recovering ambassador now. I'm an ex-excellency, and one of the titles you didn't give, actually, I used to be the foreign policy advisor to these 3 prime ministers, and we were in China, and I couldn't work out why everyone was looking at my nameplate and giggling on the other side of the room. And my job title in those days was the Private Secretary for Foreign Affairs to the Prime Minister. Very proud of my job title, a very British title. But what we hadn't realized was that the Chinese had translated that title as the intimate typist for the the intimate typist for the Prime Minister's affairs overseas, which has multiple meanings in English. I'm sure it does in Danish as well. So, among many things, I did some intimate typing for the prime ministers. But it really is great to be here in Beirut. We've actually heard about shared embassies. We shared a compound with the Danish embassy and several others. And I also discovered over the summer that through a DNA test, not a paternity test, I hasten to add, a DNA test, that more than half my DNA is Viking, and so this feels like coming home. If any jobs going in the Danish Foreign Ministry, just let me know. So the good news is that in that fantastic first session, that everything sensible that I wanted to say has already been said, and so that will give us, I hope, more time for a really high-quality interactive discussion and debate with the other panelists, just like the one we've just had. The bad news, I'm afraid, the sobering news, is that we may be too late. All of this may be way too late, because out there, outside our ecosystem of diplomats and people who care about diplomacy, care about having a worldview, out there, outside this echo chamber, outside this world of our blue ticks on Twitter that verify us as experts, out there, people think that diplomacy is now dead. They've given up on us. And I just want to give you a few examples of why that is the case. So firstly, Syria. And as ambassador in Beirut, I was at the heart of trying to deal with the Syria crisis as it unfolded around us. Years of failed negotiations, failed diplomacy, a country on our doorstep, ruined, a people forced to choose now between the box office barbarity of Islamic State, the barrel bombs of Bashar al-Assad, or the risks and perils of a Mediterranean raft. And we've got ourselves to a situation where we're standing by while Russia bombs Syrians in order to protect them from terror. A macabre twist on post-truth politics. And what do we do as Europe, this mighty continent of ours? We issue communiques. It was once said, Roosevelt once said, the art of diplomacy is to speak softly and carry a big stick. And in Syria, we've been speaking very loudly and carrying a very tiny stick. So much for diplomacy, people tell us. Another example of why we're being told that diplomacy is dead. And this one's a bit closer to home for me. Brexit. Just one of many examples now of this age of distrust in which we find ourselves. Authority and institutions that, for most of us, we assume would be always part of our working lives, are now a devalued currency, rather like another devalued currency close to home for me. And this lack of trust in institutions and hierarchies is corrosive. And so, in the Syria context, the West couldn't save Syria because of the legacy of Iraq, because it had destroyed public confidence in our foreign policy and military machine. Many in Britain rejected the EU because the financial crisis of 2008, 2009, and this perception of EU mismanagement had destroyed confidence in the city and in Brussels. The rise of Marine Le Pen and others across Europe now is that same rejection of anything that looks like the establishment or mainstream media. And the bad news here is that the public trust is not just plummeting in politicians and bankers and journalists. Everyone knows you can't trust politicians and bankers and journalists. It's also plummeting in doctors, in teachers, in policemen. No one's done a survey on diplomats, but it's also plummeting in diplomats. We're facing this phenomenon now of a global campaign against globalization. So, diplomats, those of us in this room and those of us who care about diplomacy, are going to struggle to build the trust that we need to do the most basic of jobs, the most basic of our jobs, let alone access the data that we will need to do our jobs as efficiently as we need to do in the future. I'll give you one example in Beirut. I would have had the technological means to track every British visitor to Lebanon, and if there was a crisis, get a message to them on their mobile phone to tell them where to go in order to get help. But you cannot imagine a scenario now where the British people would have allowed me that access to their mobile phones. Very simple example of where the lack of trust impairs our ability to do the job that we could do. And meanwhile, these prophets of kind of complete transparency, whether it's Julian Assange or Edward Snowden, will increasingly have the technological ability and the ideological conviction to expose more and more of what we do. To make it harder and harder to retain the confidentiality we need for classic diplomacy, as we heard earlier on. I'm not sure we're ready for that intensive scrutiny. No one looks good under that magnifying glass. So another reason that we're losing what Professor Cooper called earlier on, our legitimacy as diplomats. Another example, Google. I know we've got the head of Google for Denmark here. How many ministers come to the MFA with a question on the world before they go to Google? Kosovo existed on Google Maps before it existed on the map itself. Someone said this morning we should be sending ambassadors to tech companies. When we did the Foreign Office review of British diplomacy, we debated at length actually sending ambassadors specifically to Google, Twitter, Facebook, and the other platforms. A consulate to Elon Musk. Because technology is already doing much of what we do as diplomats faster and more efficiently than we do. Gathering information and connecting people. We can't compete. Someone said once that you can replace British diplomacy with a fax machine. We just about saw off the fax machine. And now we're challenged to see if we can see off Skype and Twitter and Facebook and Google, let alone artificial intelligence. Because the technological change we've seen in the last 100 years, 43 centuries, is what we're going to go through in the next 100 years. The equivalent of going from cave paintings to the atom bomb in the next 100 years. And change at that pace is not going to put just the businesses out of business. It's going to put big ideas out of business. And it's going to put states out of business. Everything we know about the world is due to be disrupted. And this is just the initial implications of the internet. Look at the impact of the printing press on European politics and society and scale it up massively. There will be many winners. My grandchildren, I hope, on current projections, are 200 times less likely to die violently than my grandparents. But there will also be many losers as a result of the pace of this technological change. And those people are hungry and angry, and they're coming after us. One final example of why people think that we're finished, that we may as well all go home now. And that is, of course, I managed to get 10 minutes in without mentioning his name yet. The Donald. I mean, where to begin on Donald Trump? But the relevance to us today is, some of the finest minds in diplomacy. Our job is to analyze the world around us and make predictions to give our countries a head start on political change. How many of us in the room, how many of us in diplomacy predicted Trump? I put a bet on at the beginning of the year that out of the UN, US, France, and UK, 2 would be led by women by this point. I just got, perhaps, the wrong 2. And Trump has turned all our assumptions about the way we do business on their heads. As someone said today, earlier on, that's the real disruption now that we're facing. And we find ourselves, as we look around, with now Germany having emerged as the main defender against autocracy in Europe. And thank you, Ambassador, for what Germany is doing to hold the line. China having emerged as the great defender of the Davos consensus. A celebrity billionaire emerging as the voice of the ordinary American. People in Europe and America voting for policies even though they knew they would make them poorer. People voting for liars, people they knew to be liars, to come and clean up politics. And countries like my own voting to take back control by reducing their global influence. This really is post-truth politics. And that great irony of a nation like America built on the promise and potential of immigrants, turning its back on migration. The result of all this is that an election for the leader of the free world has left a vacancy for leader of the free world. Michael mentioned driverless cars. Well, welcome to the driverless world. And as part of that, and we're seeing it already in Trump's announcements so far, the institutions that we've built carefully around diplomacy, the scaffolding around the global order, is now looking very fragile. The UN, the international financial institutions, the WTO, already in rapid decline. Can they survive the Trump era? And, of course, we all know that these trends aren't just about America. We know from history that after economic downturns, nations turn inwards when they should turn outwards. They become nationalist when they should become internationalist. The consequences of the crash of 2008, 2009 that I lived through in Downing Street with Gordon Brown could be as great as the crash of 1929. And at a time of all this prosperity that we feel all around us, inequality is rising too fast, unleashing all these spasms of anger that we're seeing at the ballot box and on the streets. Most of us are going to really love this new digital on-demand economy. We'll be able to get whatever we want, where we want it. In my hotel, I would have been able this morning to have called up the delivery of a new suit by drone, probably. But there will be people whose time is on demand so that our time can be free. And if we make that gap between winners and losers too wide, we face real peril. Someone mentioned Davos this morning. The latest Davos report says that global inequality is the biggest geopolitical risk today. And if displaced people had a country, it would be the 21st largest in the world. And I spend much of my time now as an ex-ambassador trying to deal with the consequences of all that movement of people, particularly out of Syria, for global education. We better mind that gap. So that is the context in which we're meeting. That is the challenge that we face today. That's the new normal. This mounting distrust, fueling political uncertainty. This mounting inequality, fueling economic uncertainty. And then this massive technological change, fueling existential uncertainty. And as a result of all these trends, the painful lessons that we learned in Europe during the 20th century are now stood blindfolded in front of one of Trump's walls, wondering if they'll hear the first shot of the firing squad. The assumptions on which we base diplomacy and politics are threatened. States themselves are being disrupted. So where does that leave the diplomats who claim to speak for those states? So yes, a certain kind of diplomacy is dead. Let's call that the Ferrero Rocher diplomacy. Do you have the Ferrero Rocher adverts here? With the British ambassador circulating with very posh chocolates. That sort of excellencies and protocol and status kind of diplomacy is being heavily disrupted. The foreign ministries, which still remain, like our panels so far, too male and too pale. That maps and chaps approach to the world. I must say that your foreign ministry is several decades ahead of mine on some of these themes. But the diplomacy that is dead is the diplomacy that constantly speaks to people in platitudes. When we talk to the public about warm bilateral relations and we had a candid, frank meeting, it's a way of basically saying to the public, this is too complicated for you to understand. And the public is too sophisticated now to take that kind of rubbish. They see right through it, and they won't take it from us anymore. They will challenge our legitimacy if we continue to speak to them in that way. So maybe that diplomacy is dead. Let's also call it Kodak diplomacy, the kind of diplomacy that can be done better by others, that has got too complacent and doesn't recognize the disruption we face, not just from a Putin or a Google, but also from other parts of our own government that reckon they can now do diplomacy better than us. The kind of diplomacy that, when it's asked to write a report for the minister, does it on the basis of 2 gin and tonics at an embassy party and reading the Financial Times editorial. It won't cut it anymore. The kind of ministry where IT is actually a hindrance rather than a help. You mentioned this morning that in most British embassies, you can't get Wi-Fi, including, I've just heard, here in Copenhagen. I was asked to pilot, as ambassador, a new diplomatic iPad. I was really excited, took it into the embassy that morning. I thought this is the new age of diplomacy. 5 minutes after I'd walked in, I was given a security breach for using Wi-Fi inside the embassy building. That's the end of that experience, of that experiment. So that whole order is being disrupted, but also some of those comfortable assumptions, including about Europe's place in the world. We mentioned Putin and Trump. The era when we could say with a straight face that Europe needs 5 places at the G8 summit is sadly behind us. And just to give you an example, if we're thinking about any massive global challenge now, migration, climate change, the world economy, you can't imagine us doing what we did in 1815, which is to get together the world's top diplomats for 3 months in Vienna, a group that has huge amounts, probably more in common with each other than with people outside the room, and effectively stitch up the subject, stitch up Europe. The people outside the conference room, the people outside the summit, would simply ignore us, would simply carry on. They would see us as too detached behind our canapes and communiques. So all of these challenges hitting us, hitting the business of diplomacy, the craft of diplomacy, and of course, as we've heard this morning, all of that at a time of austerity, when only a few foreign ministries still have the resource to compete in the way they did in the past. We've gone very fast from Concord diplomacy to the economy class. So that's the bad news. But it's not all over. Don't give up yet. The good news, there is another way. And the fact that we're having this meeting today shows that you've recognized this and you're getting a grip of this ahead of most people. So I'm going to share 3 survival tips, which I think are relevant not just to diplomats, but relevant to businesses, but also to all of us as individuals. Firstly, we have to reconnect with our sense of purpose. Why? Why are we here as diplomats? For me, the greatest diplomat in history was not Talleyrand or Bismarck or Kissinger, or Staffan de Mistura, Kofi Annan, the greatest diplomat in history, was, I'll call him Ugg, the first prehistoric man to persuade the other prehistoric men to put down their clubs for a moment and go and hunt together. We've always had these competing instincts to compete for resource or collaborate for resource. And the best diplomats are the people who are able to bring people together, like Ugg, to collaborate for resource. So as diplomats, as diplomacy, we have to rediscover our inner caveman. Because actually, the key dividing line for the 21st century is not going to be between East and West, or North and South, or even the haves and the have-nots that we've described. The key dividing line of the 21st century is between people who believe in coexistence across cultures and races and societies, and the people who believe that the answer to the challenges of the modern world are to build a bigger wall. And on the wrong side of that argument is not just the wall builder in chief in the White House, but also the extremist groups in our own societies, and the extremist groups that I was competing with online and offline in Lebanon. They use the same rhetoric, us and them. We can make you great again. We can be strong. It's all their fault. And they target very explicitly what they call the grey zone. If you look at Islamic State online debate, the thing they hate most is not actually the West, America, the great Satan, Christianity. What they hate is the neutral space where these ideas overlap. And that's why they attacked in the way they did in the three cities in which I've spent most of my adult life, in Paris and Nairobi and Beirut. They attacked what they call the grey zone, places like this where we interact across cultures and across societies. And for me, the iceberg that's really threatening America and Europe at the moment, the biggest threat to America in particular, is this iceberg of potential intolerance and polarization. And in the last 2 or 3 days, Donald Trump has pointed the Titanic directly at that iceberg, and he's revved the engines. So diplomats have to be on the right side of that crucial argument. That's the why. That's the reason we are here. That's why we exist. We have to be the people who build networks, as we heard earlier, in a time when institutions are failing. People who build consensus at a time of arguments. People who build bridges at a time of wars. We have to be the people that strive for expertise, patience, perspective, judgment, at a time of fake news, sound bites, and echo chambers. We have to be the people who stay courageously calm, tolerant, honest, factual, in a time of outrage and intolerance and post-truth politics. We have to make the positive case for our countries to be magnetic and diverse. And we have to be smart enough to recognize the potential of migration and the potential of migrants, as from Einstein to Steve Jobs. We were all migrants once, of course, and the 21st century may make us all migrants again. And above all, we have to remain curious. We have to remain curious in a time when there is too much certainty. So, yeah, let's get out there and drain the swamp. We're told to drain the swamp. Let's drain the swamp of those who are promoting intolerance, whether in tabloids or places of worship, and those who weaponize intolerance during political campaigns. Let's drain the swamp of those selling the snake oil of hatred and difference as a panacea for globalization. Let's drain the swamp of this short-term policy by media cycle, which so alienates the public, and of those who are selling quick fixes, tiny announcements, as the answers to a complex world. And let's drain the swamp of the inequality which is actually creating this lack of opportunity and extremism on which all this anger is festering. And let's, as diplomats, restate our value in that argument, because at previous times of massive transition, as empires came and went, as economies fell, it was diplomats who found a way to provide the lubricant in the machine to reduce the risk of conflict as a result of such change. We made previous transitions less violent, and we will have to do that again. So we still need diplomats because the implications of diplomatic failure are now more ominous than ever. This effective diplomacy which we're talking about here is no luxury. So survival tip number 2, now that hopefully we've rediscovered our mojo and why we exist, just as every business has to withstand disruption, every business looking to withstand disruption has to understand its core strengths, so do we. We have to know what we have always done well. And we've discussed this already this morning, so I won't go into so much detail. But it means investing in our key skills that support classical diplomacy: patience, courage, tact, resilience, the ability to eat anything and get on with anyone. We may have failed in Syria, but classic diplomacy has worked in Iran and on Cuba, away from the social media spotlight. So we will still need what we heard this morning is so vital: classical diplomacy. It's not less diplomacy, but just better diplomacy that we need. Survival tip 3, once you've identified the sense of purpose, once you know why you're there, once you've identified what it is you do well, you then have to start using the technology as effectively as the competition. And you have to recognize this as a smartphone superpower. When I was in Beirut, the smartphone with which I was trying to connect with people, communicate, engage people outside on social media, was also the device through which terrorists were tracking my movements. For me, that was a metaphor for how this is a huge opportunity and a huge threat. And at the moment, we're losing the battle. We're losing the war for online terrain. The bad guys are better at this than we are. Just go and have a look at the way that Islamic State use gaming technology. So we have to get more technologically literate. We have to appoint ambassadors for technology. We have to ensure that all our ambassadors become tech ambassadors. One of my favorite stories about diplomacy is about the Chinese diplomat whose job it was in the 5th century BC to negotiate treaties for the emperor. And he was normally negotiating with opponents who were buried up to their heads in sand. It's quite an easy way to negotiate when you're negotiating with people who are buried up to their heads in sand. So it was a kind of easy job. It was called a Sherpa. We still have Sherpas now, of course. But on the way back from one of these battles to see his emperor, he had to ride 5 days on the same horse. His opponents in the negotiation had developed a system for resting horses, 5 horses. So he would gallop all day, jump on the next one, gallop all day. As a result, they got back to the capital and stitched up a deal with the emperor before he could get there. Now, we only know this story because the emperor was, as you can guess, not a very merciful man. And so he took poor Shen, this Chinese diplomat, and he slow-sliced him. 999 cuts. Because it was seen as a major crime, he wasn't given any opium to make this any better. It's death by 1,000 cuts. And we know about this because it was the first human rights case recorded in Chinese history. Years and years later, it was referred to when they were trying to abolish death by 1,000 cuts. But it reminds us that if you do not adapt to new technology, if you're not the person who is on the rested horse, then you get slow sliced. Diplomacy is, as one of the messages on stage has said, Darwinian. We adapt or die. Thank you. So I want to give you a couple of quick examples. Sorry, I'll stop if you like.
You're eager to get on.
It was a sip of water.
That's the message.
A couple of quick examples of how we tried to do this in Beirut. One was at the period when we didn't have diplomatic relations with Iran. I wasn't allowed any contact with the Iranians, particularly the Iranian ambassador. I had to kind of, if the Iranian ambassador was in the room, I don't know if the Iranian ambassador is here now, I used to have, my instructions were to adopt a hostile demeanor. And I really don't do a very good hostile demeanor at all. And the Iranian embassy was bombed. Quite large loss of life. And I thought, I'm restricted. I can't go down to the embassy and express condolences in a classic way, as I should. And so instead, I went down and donated blood outside the embassy, and of course made sure that someone captured a behind-the-scenes photograph of this happening. And the photo went viral in Iran. It was retweeted by Rouhani. This was at a time when we were still very much the little Satan. It surprised people. It just challenged people a bit that a Western ambassador, let alone a British ambassador, would feel that sort of solidarity. Much more effective than any speech I could ever have given about the future of Iran relations. Another example, we wanted to try and start a campaign on better treatment of migrant workers in Lebanon. And again, we realized there's no point in giving speeches. And so I became a migrant worker for the day, a domestic worker. And I spent the morning in an apron, cleaning the bathroom, cooking, washing up. Again, making sure we had photos of all of that. But then in the afternoon, Kalkidan Negusi, the Ethiopian domestic worker that was showing me around, became the ambassador. And she went out there and we visited the Interior Minister, and she made the case for better treatment of workers. And then she delivered a press conference which was stunningly brilliant, and challenged people at dinner tables up and down the country that evening to think about how they treated their staff. It had way, way more impact and I know this from feedback from people all over Lebanon, way more impact than anything else we could have done to raise the profile of that issue. It moved the needle. It led the news for 2 nights that this had happened. So we're competing for space, and we've got to think about innovative ways to use the smartphone to fill the space that is otherwise occupied by our opponents. We're competing for space with Justin Bieber. We're competing for space with Islamic State. We're competing for space with cute cats. We've just found this morning we're competing for space with Professor Henson as well, who's more popular than the Danish MFA online. And all this transparency is on balance a really, really good thing. It will make us better at our jobs. Every time there's been a jump forward in oversight of what we do, a democratization of foreign policy making, it has resulted in the end in fewer people dying in conflict. And that is my great hope with social media and digital technology, that will be another great jump forward in what is basically our bottom line, that fewer people dying in conflict. So just to finish then, what does this mean for the Danish MFA? And let's open this up to the conversation, continue the conversation we've started. I think it's as much about mindset as modalities or mechanics. I think you have to get into the mindset, as you are today, of occupying yourself. If there was an Occupy movement that took over the MFA, what would it do differently? And I think when you look at Danish diplomacy, you have some real core strengths. I've worked with many of your ambassadors around the world. You have fantastic individual ambassadors, and I'm not just saying that because I'm here. You have a reputation for having the people in the capital who know their way around, who run quite small and fleet-footed, effective missions. You have a strong global network, and you have a national brand at a time when we all need to worry about our national brands, especially those of us trying to rebrand ourselves. You have a national brand which is really very powerful, very compelling, and quite high in that league table of soft power skills. And you have resilience. As Professor Markussen said, you have a natural resilience to what you do. So I think that what you need to do is to, as far as possible, free up your talent that's there to do what it does best, which is diplomacy. That means focusing, again, on the sense of purpose. It means innovating. It means being flexible. It means taking more calculated risks. We're hopeless as diplomats at taking calculated risks. It means having more confidence in what you do, explaining it overseas and at home. And it means giving more autonomy to your people in the field. It means fewer meetings. It means fewer layers. It means fewer departments, fewer desks. In the review of the Foreign Office, I abolished the post of the desk officer. I don't want British diplomats sat behind the desk, especially if they can't get Wi-Fi. It means fewer paper trails and fewer calls frustrated to IT. It means a shift from culture that prioritizes hierarchy and competences and inputs, a nice piece of analysis, to a culture that prioritizes skills, these modern 21st century survival skills, that prioritizes, as we heard, networks and real-world outcomes, that takes the initiative, that can live with a greater degree of calculated risks. I think on the mechanics, by the way, it also means putting more people out in the field. I was shocked in the UK to find that only 1 in 3 of our diplomats was overseas. I understand the figure for you guys is better than that. And it means really making the case relentlessly at home for why what we do matters. There's this perception that ambassadors should be heard in the countries in which they're serving, but not back in the capital. I run up against this all the time at the moment. Our ministers don't tend to really want us in the domestic media, but that will have to change because we do have to work harder to get that domestic public trust that we need. The 3 prime ministers I worked with all said, I love the ambassadors. We've got brilliant ambassadors. I hate the Foreign Office. And we have to find a way to explain to politicians and the public why what we do as the office, as the ministry matters, as well as what the individual ambassadors do. It also means we have to be more data-driven, and I'm sure we'll come on to talk about this in much more detail. The next wave of technology is about artificial intelligence, but the next wave of digital diplomacy is really about how we use big data. And so I'd love to have a bit more of a debate about that and to tell you a bit more about how at York University at the moment we're building a Diplobot that can help you manage all of this data out there. That is, in a nutshell, naked diplomacy. That's the kind of diplomacy I think we need to move towards. Because diplomacy is much harder in periods of austerity. It's much harder in periods like this of introspection, as we're having in America and Europe. It's much harder when you no longer have enemies that you can find on a map or that you can kill in a bomb field. And so we need to reconnect with our sense of purpose that's always characterized us at our best, from UGG through the best days of classic diplomacy, the Congress of Vienna, and up to now. And we need to help our country succeed in the 21st century through a worldview that's actually formed of having seen the world. Because when we fail, we get war. Just a story to finish on why I care so much about diplomacy, and it relates to, in a way, to a point the Irish ambassador made earlier. We were doing a meeting in Beirut on reconciliation. How do you bring societies back together after conflict? And I was being very ambassadorial and going around and shaking hands and flying the flag and so on. And I met one lady and said, so what are you doing here? And she said, I'm here to talk about reconciliation with my friend here because my father was killed in a bomb in Northern Ireland. I said, well, that's terrific, admire your courage. I said all the things she would say, I hope, in that situation. And then I turned to the person next to her and said, and so why are you here in Beirut? And he said, I was the bomber. So diplomacy is not dead. Diplomacy is more vital than ever. That's what we do. If diplomacy didn't exist, we would now be needing to invent it. And now you're going to have to reinvent it.